Roe versus Wade thing freaks me out.
Yeah.
Man. It freaks me out.
Why?
For so many reasons. First of all, because how many women need to get abortions because of the health of the child? Like
So many.
How many people need to get abortions because their child was raped?
My
How many times that I was reading a story about like a 10-year-old.
just happened. My friend had to get a little bit of placenta removed after a pregnancy, and the drugs they used to get it out, like the stuff she had to take, those could put her on a list, apparently. Like, it's this stuff, like, the problem is, like, all these, like, completely legitimate reasons for getting an abortion. Not just that, just, like, basic, like stuff that has not, you don't even have a baby in you anymore. Just,
Right.
you know, some of these drugs are going to be harder to get in certain places, apparently. And, yeah, man, it's like, you know, it's wild to see how quickly rights, like human rights, can just go bye-bye like that in a second. It's just done.
Rights that we never thought we were going to lose.
Right.
Like, there's certain ways that we looked at the world. We're like, well, we've passed that. The government's control over us is not nearly what it was in the 80s or the 90s.
Yeah.
We've moved past that. And then all of a sudden, especially during the pandemic, it's almost like while you were sleeping, they were just like gaining ground.
Yeah.
Gaining ground.
Dude, it's a long-term plan.
It seems like even if it wasn't a long-term plan, even if there wasn't some grand scheme to try to enslave people back to the old way,
Yeah.
they're doing exactly what you would do if that was true.
Sure.
So how are they even different by definition?
Well, that's what's so... Well, you know, man, in this book about... I'm sorry to go back to it. In the book about the American Revolution, they were talking about how careful in the early days of the Revolution you had to be. You had to be, like, completely underground to even, like, get the thing going. So what you're talking about here is weirdly above ground and underground. It's above ground in the sense, like, you have these mega churches that are tax exempt who are paying for lobbyists in D.C. And those lobbyists are the ones who are like, who've been working on getting rid of Roe v. Wade. But it's not just that. It doesn't end there.
Is it lobbyists? Is that what was the decision to change it?
To change Roe v. Wade?
Yes. What was the decision?
I started reading it because I was, people were saying, look, just read the fucking thing and then see if it's logical, And so basically the argument was, and I'm sorry, everybody, I'm dressed like a founding father and I'm drinking whiskey. So obviously this will not be a perfect articulation of the reasoning. But
Yes.
The reasoning was that Roe v. Wade is... When you're in the Supreme Court, if something is not for sure constitutional, then you use precedent. Is this part of American tradition? Is this like woven into the fabric of America? And if so, then, it gets enshrined as a law or whatever. So his argument was abortion 50 years ago was illegal in almost all the states. And so because of that, there isn't a precedent and it's not constitutional. Therefore, these two things mean that Roe v. Wade isn't like an overreach by the federal government to take away states' rights. I think that's the argument, but to me, like the problem in it is as a former judge and someone who went to law school, the problem in the legal reasoning of like this guy who's been on the Supreme Court, hubris. I'm sorry, but to me, it's like, well, yeah, but sometimes culture happens fast. Sometimes things get woven into the tradition of a country, not over hundreds of years, but 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. And obviously a woman's right over her body is, it doesn't matter if like 100 years ago or 200 years ago that wasn't in there. It's just the way, it's like, this is half the human fucking population, and it's their body.
Yeah.
And some of them will die.
You can't force them to do that. And here's the other thing. It's like when they talk about this, it's like when these laws and these ideas were first instituted, you couldn't have an abortion like you could have today, right? Like abortions today are probably way safer than they were 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So if we're basing what it means to have an abortion 100 years ago versus now with MRIs, the ability to like, people find out that their child's not going to live sometimes while it's in the womb. It's a horrible, tragic thing, but it does occasionally, rarely happen, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
What are you supposed to tell that person to do? Like, if you know that there's something wrong with the feet, it's never going to develop. It's done. Like,
Yeah.
It's fucked.
Yeah.
You can't have an abortion. You telling someone that gets raped they can't have an abortion? Like, to say to the people that we get to decide what you do with your body, that's where shit gets really
That's
fucking
right,
squirrely.
man. That's right.
And the problem with abortion is that this is the weirdest one of all, because it's really about the creation of life. Out of all the decisions we make about every other thing we do, whether it's gender pronouns or the environment or whether you eat meat or any, the abortion one's the wildest, because you're literally talking about a potential human being just like you entering into the world.
Yeah.
And that's why it troubles us so much when people have varied opinions on it.
Sure.
We want you to be a hardcore supporter or a hardcore anti. That's it. We don't have a whole lot of room for gray area in the abortion debate. And because of things like this, where they get rid of Roe v. Wade, it's going to be even more like antagonistic against the two sides.
That's it. Yeah. It fucks everything up, man. It's like it amplifies this, like, what they're calling it. It creates this kind of weird medical balkanization. Everyone loves to say that right now, but that's what they're doing. It's like to force somebody to go have the worst day of their life in another state because their state that they're in won't let them do it. It's just so fucking sad to imagine somebody who, like, already maybe they can't afford the procedure, having to figure out a way to, like, get a plane ticket, fly to California or fly to one of the states that they're letting them do it. The whole thing is just so sinister, man. And it's just the beginning. I mean, this is like, well, like the Democrats and the Blues have been arguing over this and that and at each other's fucking throats and all disorganized and chaotic. The fucking Christian right, they're just one unified front with a set of ideas that they want put into law, and ideas that they think that are in law that shouldn't be anymore. And they're fucking organized. They have all the money. They don't pay taxes, and they're going to keep going. They're not going to stop. They don't pay taxes.